Welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy. This is my cat, who apparently wants to be the star of the show today. But we have a co host. Let me just bring him in so we can get started. Hey, SR,
Hey,
how's it going?
good. I don't have a fuzzy little creature with me that will be co-hosting today, but maybe in the future, one day. I'm thinking maybe a bunny rabbit,
Ooh.
or like a sugar glider. I don't know. I just
Ooh,
those are
sugar
the
glider would be
first,
great.
yeah,
You're right in the
those are
middle
the
of a
first
call and
two
it just
things
like
that came to
attacks you
right,
from a
right,
fucking
right,
rafter.
right.
That'd be amazing. The funny thing is today is the day that I set up automatic focus on the camera. I normally
Oh.
manually focus it, and at some point she's gonna steal the focus, and it's gonna be so blurry. I'm gonna go crazy. But hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm secularity.
Today is Sunday, February 9th, 2025. This is Skeptic Generation. I feel like after watching the last couple of episodes back, I realize that I don't really lay the foundation for the show, which makes it difficult for new people to kind of get involved, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like kind of laying that out and then setting the subject out would be a good way to get started and kind of roll into it. So, for those who are new or who have just kind of picked this up and wondering what the heck this show is, it is a live call-in show where we talk about what we believe and why. And more than that, we have different really awesome co-hosts every week for different topics. So last week was Tori, who's politically one of the most savvy people that I know. And this week, the second Sunday of every month, we have Secular Rarity, who is able to, Elliot, you're able to get involved in like the nitty gritty in philosophy in a way that I really admire.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
and it's like it gets down to the basics, the stuff that I really cut my teeth on when I started doing call-in shows. And so this feels like this second Sunday definitely feels like it's going to be the one that's closest to home, as far as
Hey.
familiarity. And plus, you're my friend, and I just like hanging out with you. So
We always have fun.
we do, and we are happy, everyone, to take your calls. Um, Before we do, I want to give a little bit of information about SR. Um, I keep wanting to jump ahead, and I realize no, I need to set the stage. Secular Rarity is a regular contributor on numerous call-in shows and YouTube channels. Where else can people find you, man?
Yeah, so one of the most recent things that I've been doing, which I'm really, really excited about, is I've been working with a group of non-religious people here in the Middle Tennessee, Nashville area, and we have been building a new 501c3. So we are working on a brand new nonprofit called Secular Rising US,
Mm-hmm.
and it is all about connecting and supporting atheists, humanists, secular-minded people with activism, service, education, community, all types of cool stuff. So we've got a bunch of really really awesome things that are coming up this year, and our goal is to provide that provide that space that honestly we just don't have on our side.
No, we don't.
um, in the religious communities, in the religious, institutions that
Mm-hmm.
exist, one of the biggest reasons that they are so successful is their ability to get out the message and mobilize. And the only way that that is possible is because they have dedicated organizations
Yeah.
with dozens and dozens of people
Oh, ton.
and
Yeah.
large backers
And and
that
and
are
and there are so many organizations like that that compete with each other. They
100%.
like it's wild.
Yeah.
I
And that is something that for a long time and for a lot of different reasons, right? We haven't been able to do that on our side. For 2000 plus years, right? you have had a manual for building a new church,
Hmm.
you know? What does it look like to build specifically focused non-religious community? What is the manual for building a secular home for people? What does that look like? Well, we honestly we don't really know, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and that's something I think that unfortunately has held us back for so long. But I'm the type of person that looks at the situation and says, not, oh man, we've only got 20% of the population that's non religious, right? If only we could get it to 21%. What a better world it would. I look at the situation and say 80% of our neighbors haven't yet found out how great a secular life is.
Yeah.
80% of the people around us don't yet know how much greener the grass is on this side.
And
I can't wait to share it.
well, and I mean, just the word secular was a distasteful word. You know, growing up in a religious
Yeah.
household, you know, secular just means not religious. That's
Mhm.
it. That's it. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything unique, you know, or different. It just means that you're not doing that. And there are secular things that we do every day. Brushing your teeth is a secular thing.
Yeah.
Making a sandwich is a
Yeah.
secular thing. You know, it's everything else. And yeah, if you just, you know, can build those communities. Yeah. The thing that I think the problem, like part of the problem, I think, is that the kind of modern atheist movement has built itself around this kind of debate bro. I'm this unique, special, you know, contrarian. And so because of that, it's like herding cats often. And so the fact that you're putting
Yeah.
this together, and it's not just that you're putting this together as like a resource, you know, online, you know, it's the activism and the community that you're building at home as this kind of
Yeah.
home based network that you want to grow from and continue to feed and thrive. That feels real and it feels boots on the ground in a way that I think is going to help shift things. And so I'm incredibly supportive of you. You know that. And I very, very much want to see that succeed. So, hey,
Thank
everybody,
you, man.
this is SR. SR is not only a community organizer, but also a regular host and or a contributor on other shows. I know that you're regularly on or have been on Talk Heathen quite a few times. Have you been on the Atheist Experience?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep. I'm one of the hosts there now.
yeah. Let's see. What other shows are you regularly on?
Oh man, I've been on Skeptic Haven a bunch. I've
Mhm.
been on Atheist Republic, their English channel, a bunch. I was just hanging out with the Apostate Sisters the other day. I go hang out with the Punk Apostate now and then. Ways to Human just literally last night. There's too much. There's too much. It's I'm always bouncing around on different channels and I have always loved that aspect of it. I have always loved that connection. And one of my favorite things to do, and, you know, almost anybody will tell you, when I end a show with them, one of the first things out of my mouth is, you know, hey, do you know so and so? Or um, have you ever thought about having blah blah on your channel? You
Mhm.
know, um, I love to get people in this space connected. I love to highlight and showcase all the incredible diversity and just the wonderful, wonderful people that we have. You know, and that is what I am really excited for these next couple of years. I think that for a lot of obvious reasons, I think people are going to be a little upset. People are going to
Yeah,
be
absolutely. I
people are
mean,
going
geez,
to
I feel like I've been fighting this continued kind of existential despair
yeah.
since the election, and
A lot of my friends have.
yeah,
And that anger and that anxiety and stress and that sadness, you know. We need an outlet for those. We
We
need an
do.
opportunity for us to gather together
Hmm.
and to be able to focus those energies, because they don't get any better when they just fester. They don't get any better when we just let them go and we don't actually address them, right?
No, you just hurt yourself
um
with them. It's
Exactly.
yeah,
And I know that there are a lot of people that are feeling burnt out, and they're feeling like, you know what, man? SR, I love the thought. I'm just not here for the debate right now. I just don't got it in me. Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. Fantastic. You know why? Because I bet what you do have the spoons for right now is something like holding space for others that are also commiserating,
yeah,
or providing an opportunity to educate people on something that you're passionate about, that gives you that little bit of fire, to wake up in the morning. Like, I know there is something that every single one of us can offer and build this community.
yeah.
We need to truly champion that diversity that exists on our side. Let's
Absolutely.
let's start highlighting and promoting things that, you know what? They don't even affect me, man. I
No,
would love, I would
but
love if we had an ex-Muslim group in Nashville, Tennessee getting together. I'm not an ex-Muslim. I don't speak Arabic, but I would love if there was an Arabic speaking ex-Muslim group that gathered in our area, because I want to tell other people about that.
yeah,
I'm not gonna. It's not gonna help me. Like, I won't
no,
understand what they're saying, but we have to build a truly broad coalition, because
we do.
we've got
Yeah, and I mean honestly, the best version of myself, is one that says that a rising tide lifts all boats, and we
Yep.
can't expect to be those things that we're not. Like if we're not good at a thing, we shouldn't be the person to do it. But if we grow that big enough community, we'll get those people that we need in those positions. They will come,
Yeah.
and part of that, yeah, absolutely. All right. We got several callers. We didn't even dive into what the topic is. The topic that I had picked today for is when to argue. It doesn't need to be the topic, but as a launching off point, you're talking to two people who've done this for a good while, and it might seem like this kind of format, right, is one where you see a lot of arguments. And that's because this is the place to argue. It doesn't mean your workplace is, doesn't mean your home life is. And sometimes though you need to step up and you need to say something, when that uncle finally breaks that last straw at the Thanksgiving table, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
But not just preaching to the choir. We've got all sides we want to talk to, but let's start by talking to Stephen in Pennsylvania. Stephen, you're live on the show.
Well, thanks. It's been a while because I've been so busy, so I wanted to make sure I called back in. So I hope you're both doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about something that happened. I'm involved in theater.
Mm-hmm.
Longtime listeners may recognize my voice. So I'm involved in theater, and I ran stage crew for the first time for a Christmas show this past season. And there were kids in the show, and the grown-ups needed to decompress when the kids left for the evening. That the conversation could get very blue.
Yeah.
And one of the adult cast members is super conservative. In fact, an issue came up because he voted for Trump, and one of the kids in the show who's non-binary was very upset about this because they felt like he cared about them and was a friend and was an ally, and then when they found out he voted for Trump, I had to talk them off a ledge.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the atmosphere that we were dealing with. And we, as with any social group, whether we all admit it or not, we gossip about each other. And so I knew a lot about We'll call him Mr. Chuckles for right now because his politics annoy me. But we were having the kids had left and the grown-ups were talking, and he wasn't in the room, but we had gone, let's just say, down a road that conservatives might not enjoy.
Okay.
And he came in, and I watched the blood drain from his face. So, and I happened to be the one speaking the blue line at that particular moment. So the next night, I took him aside and I said, I want you to know, Mr. Chuckles, that I know you're very conservative, and I know that might have been uncomfortable for you to walk in on. I said, but we're grown-ups and we can't curse, and we can't talk about some of the things that we want to talk about when the kids are around. So we went a little off the rails, but I wanted you to know that I did not intend to offend you.
That's
and
very diplomatic of you.
He said, well, thank you for that. And I said, and I know, what I've heard about you. And suddenly he started to go into his politics. And I was like, no. We don't
Did not invite
there.
this. Yeah.
What I wanted to make clear was we're here for a specific reason, and it's our love of theater, our love of performing, our love of the arts. And I can appreciate that in you. Let's not ruin it. Let's not go to the other side of the thing because, I have a lot of thoughts, and and I'm me, and I'm married to a man, and it was awfully fun to tell the kids that my husband was playing Scrooge in another theater's production, and they were like, "You're married to him?" And of course, the kids are like, "This is the world we live in," and they don't care.
Yeah.
But they're also their parents didn't care. As for Mr. Chuckles, he did care, but you know what? Doesn't matter because I'm still going to be married when rehearsal's over, and he can still be annoyed about it, and we're not going to get anywhere. And it really just didn't feel like the place. And I mentioned the gossip thing because I feel like this is a way to weaponize the gossip a little bit, because I found out through the grapevine later that scored me a lot of points. And because I didn't confront, I was very respectful.
You were gracious, for sure.
I was very gracious about it. So that was kind of how I handled it. And I thought I would call in with that story because there's a lot of other things I could say about this young man. But, it felt like it ended the right way. And, we went through the rest of the production with no problems. And he felt safe around me, which was really what was most important. And I supplemented my existing reputation for being someone who is an atheist and my sexuality and Democrat and whatever else. And, there we go.
So here's my thought. My thought is that you had kind of home field advantage there. You were in a place that was safe, that probably, it sounds like, other people of other marginalized groups could potentially go to and also feel safe. And so because of that, it sounded like you had the opportunity to be gracious because you weren't choosing between, whether or not allowing that person there was going to make the space unsafe for others.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't disagree with you, Eric. The only thing I'll add, though, is that because of the election and because of just the insanity that's gone on since January 20th, these spaces are becoming infected. Yes, this area of my life and this area of life may be more open to marginalized groups. However, we are as diverse a population as any other. That there are, I was shocked that Mr. Chuckles is as conservative and Republican as he is, given the number of us marginalized people that he tends to interact with, that he shouldn't know better. So I'll spank him later.
In local theater, it's odd to find somebody like that. I think that's. But
not unheard of, because I also, with this particular theater, I work a lot with the board, and it's a range of people. Some are very pro-LGBT and some are not, and some are very left-leaning and some are not. And so you do have that variation. This is the only point I would make. I don't, however, disagree with you.
No,
because I'm also somewhat intimidating. There's that.
So I don't know. I think honestly, Stephen, I'm becoming a lot more radical in the way that I interact, and that might be because I no longer live in the South.
Hmm.
It might be because I've created with around me a community of people who don't have patience for that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I feel like it's not 2010 anymore, and people's opinions on whether or not you know LGBT folks should be in the in the wider world. We're well past that, and I don't know.
One would think.
I had an interaction, and I know this is kind of going a bit abroad, but it's still on topic. Is I spoke to my mother this week, my mother who voted for Trump, and she said, "Hey, how's everything going?" Good. Now, my mom and my adopted dad, they love my partner for who they are. Always get the pronouns right. Yeah, they're very very caring, and are like that is a wonderful relationship that they have. And so when they said, "Hey, how's V doing?" I said, "Oh well, we spent the last 2 weeks desperately trying to figure out how we're going to make sure that testosterone is available for my partner in transition because the person you voted for has very clearly stated that they want to limit and end as much of that as possible, and have been removing resources federally all over the place. So it's been very stressful." She got real quiet. And it's tough because this is somebody I know who loves my trans partner and yet voted for someone who wants to strip those rights away from my partner. And I didn't make that the seed of a fight to have, and I think that my mom was a little sheepish about it. And good. I maybe I'm picking more fights than I should, but I definitely think that I had the opportunity
So,
to be gracious like you did, and I didn't take it this week. What do you think,
well,
Well,
Asaf?
but I don't. But
yeah,
I
let
think you
me.
handled it exactly right. Only because that's also the kinds of conversations that I've been having with people about when we do get into politics or some of these things, that it's explaining to people they don't realize. And the way you explained it just now sounded like it was very gently stated, like, this is the fact of my life now, and this is what I'm dealing with. And you weren't blaming your mom for her vote,
Well, it
not
kind of was.
aggressively or directly, but you were saying this is the result of what's happened now,
Yeah,
and we all have to live with it. And someone you love, mom,
is
is going
now
to be
her.
infected by this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's a
Um,
problem.
I think
I think
Elliot wanted to
that's
interject.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
and I
Elliot.
think no worries. I think the way that both of you handled these, respective situations, I really do think that they were handled well, and I think those types of interactions are going to be the things over the next few years that are really going to move the needle. Um, I don't feel that either of you were argumentative, right? I don't feel like either of you were discompassionate or uninterested in the other person or anything like that, right? I don't think you were dismissive or talking down or none of that. But you were clearly stating a disagreement that you have and the personal experience that this person can relate to and latch on to. Like, hey, look, Mr. Chuckles, like, I'm just going to tell you straight up. You know, Sarah, Timmy, I mean, these types of statements, these types of actions, they hurt them. They're friends of ours. We love them. We've been working this whole season for this play together. Like, you have to understand that this is, at this space, we're a family and we stick up for each other, just the same. Mom, look, you you have to realize in the last couple of weeks we've been pulling our fucking hair out. We have been not sleeping, nonstop worried. Like, yeah, you want to know how we're doing? Not great right now, you know? That is what I think truly is going to be powerful in these next couple of years. I don't consider that a call out. I don't consider that putting somebody on blast. I consider that calling somebody in, bringing over a somebody that supposedly has started this conversation
Mhm.
by saying like, "Hey, we like each other.
Well, and
We care
they were
about each other."
specifically asking about this person that they love, and yeah, I
Right. That's just you holding space for yourself. Just be giving yourself that actual respect that we give other people. If Mr. Chuckles had come into the practice one day and he was looking all bummed out and feeling all sad and shit, you'd be like, "Hey man, what's going on? Why are you upset?" And
I
then it's totally valid for them to say like, having a bad day, not feeling good, whatever. So it's completely valid for us to say, yeah, man, honestly, last couple of weeks have been a lot. It's weighed on me,
okay.
and
So
that's tough.
well, here's the question to you both then. At what point do you make it an argument?
Yeah, I
I
think that one big place for me is dehumanization, right?
I
yeah.
mean,
If
but
if somebody's Mhm.
isn't the Trump administration actively and very, very clearly dehumanizing the trans population?
Sure,
Not just the
Sure.
trans population, but
but
immigrant
not
population.
but
Hell,
not
I'm
your mom, not Mr. Chuckles, right? Like,
no.
And
they're
I
not
think
they're
that's the
not
point. That's,
directly
yeah.
doing that. Doesn't mean they didn't contribute to it, doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable, doesn't mean we shouldn't point that out and educate them. But there's a difference between the individual signing the law, right? And the person who voted in an election 3 years ago. Now obviously is much closer. I'm just, as an example, right? I think making that distinction is important, especially when it's people that we do care about. And broadly, like, there's a lot of things we agree on. There is a lot of stuff that we see eye to eye on, and more
I
importantly, we
mean,
care.
sure. And so I've used this example before in the past. Am I right? I have family in Arizona, and for those who are old enough to remember Joe Arpaio and the laws that were passed in Arizona, right? There was a immigration papers, papers please law that essentially you could be pulled over on suspicion of being an immigrant, an illegal immigrant, an undocumented citizen, and that you needed to provide proof of your citizenship upon request to any police officer who asked, just for any reason, including no reason at all, or you would be arrested and deported on the spot. Right? My much darker skinned Mexican uncle voted for this group and supported Joe Arpaio and was pulled over 7 times in 2 months, the first 2 months. And it's like, okay, at what point are you going to continue to go, I'm just continuing to suffer because of your choices, and these are the ways that I'm suffering. Or at what point do you go, you're a fucking moron? Like, are you serious? I mean, it's one thing to vote against the interests of and the well-being of people that you're not a part of, but you actively actually voted to support legislation that was going to damage you personally. And I mean, I don't know. At what point do we stand up and say, let what you are doing is actively harming everyone else?
I
Well,
think
and
that
I think
Go
what I
ahead,
would
buddy.
add, there's a point of, so in the case of Mr. Chuckles, I don't know how the conversation came up about his vote. I wasn't there. But there is something about people who are reveling in what Trump is doing as well. It's one thing, you make a good point, Elliot, that Eric's mom and Mr. Chuckles aren't necessarily going out looking for immigrants to deport or demonstrating against us or what have you. There's that level of participation in government that we have to address. But then there's someone I'm thinking of at another theater where all of the other actors have turned against him because he's reveling in what's happening to people right now. And that's additional steps further.
Well,
where you're not just, you voted for this and you might have regrets and you're not recognizing how people are going to be hurt. But then when it is explained to you, oh, you're excited about that you're excited that hormone treatments are going to be denied, or marriages are going to be dissolved, or people are going to be deported. That's a whole other level that I think it's appropriate to say, you're a dickhead. So get out of my face before we have a problem, or something else to that effect.
Is it just if they're reveling in it though? I mean, I don't know. I feel like there are a whole lot of people who voted Republican because they wanted to see their tax rates go down. They're fiscally conservative, and they're fiscal conservatism
in how people voted, and I don't condone that either.
And so how, then you're looking at how many Judases who sold out their own, their neighbors, for some coin. Like, how much financially does it make it worth it to you to sell out and damage the people around you so that you can make a couple extra bucks? Maybe a lot of extra bucks. What is it worth? What is it worth to see your community hurt?
Well, and that comes down to how you define your community. I mean, that's part of the problem too. I'm saying I don't disagree with you at all, Eric, but in the case of Mr. Chuckles, I don't socialize with him. I don't do anything with him. He's not going to be part of my life.
Yeah.
But in the job that we were doing at the time, that felt like the right way to handle it, as far as we have a job to do, and this is the job that we all committed to, and I can appreciate your support of the arts, and I can deal with you when you are here. But am I going to go have dinner with you? Am I going to invite you over for Christmas or for Thanksgiving? Yeah. No, because I don't want you anywhere near my life, because you don't get that privilege.
Okay.
As arrogant as that may sound, you don't get that. And
are good,
I know who does not have my back, or the backs of a lot of people that I care about, whether it's LGBT or immigrant communities or Democrats. There are people who feel like Democrats are traitors, or people who didn't vote for MAGA are traitors. So you're still curating, I think, and taking steps. But when it comes to use Elliot's word of being argumentative, I think there are times when it's constructive and times when there's not. Right. And you if you feel like it's going to be an educational experience for the other person and they're open to hearing it, that's one direction to go, because maybe they didn't realize. And I think there are people, because I want to say your mom. I don't think your mom ever intended to hurt me.
Let me jump in. Stephen, let me jump in for just a second.
I'm sorry, Elliot.
No. It's totally fine. So I think the biggest thing that we haven't addressed yet is about what our goal is, what our motivation is in these moments. And if we really sit down with ourselves and come to an answer on that, then I think the path forward and how to engage in a lot of these conversations becomes a lot easier to understand. So for me personally, and I'm not saying this is the route that everyone should take, but for me personally, I often prefer a goal of something along the lines of education and compassion. Those are the types of things that I go for, right? That is not everybody's goal. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should have that goal. If your goal is real similar to mine, I'm going to say there are a handful of ways that don't work as well, it seems, right? For instance, calling somebody a fucking idiot, how could you do that, you dumb dickhead, that doesn't tend to get us to that goal, right? That being said, that is okay that is not everybody's goal. And I think, again, like I was talking about earlier, in the broad coalition that we need to have, we are comfortable with the idea that there are the Christians and there are the people on the right that are firebrand. I mean, that they never shut the fuck up. They are yelling, constantly slamming their fist. That's just who they are. That's just how they act, And then there's also those people on their side that they're real loving and they talk real soft and they're so sweet and they just want to hug everybody, and we're okay that they have that diversity and they're all considered on the same side. Let's allow that on our side. And hey, Eric wakes up today and he's not taking your shit. And he's gonna sell
Uh-oh.
you out, baby. But then there are some times he wakes up and he wants to love everybody and he wants to hug and he wants to, and that's okay.
So
You know?
I mean, I get the, you know, being in different moods and all of that. I guess this just gets into what is civility politics. And I feel like that's a broader conversation that I think we should absolutely have.
Yeah,
But we do have a couple of other callers who've been waiting on the line that I'd love to grab as well. Stephen, thank you for calling in.
Always, and best to V. And in all honesty, I'm such a fan of V. Almost changed my name to W just so I could follow them.
That's very,
There
very
you go.
sweet. I'll let them know you
Have
said
a great
so.
day. I'll talk to you both soon. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
thank.
Bye.
Okay, before we get, because I know we've got lots of other topics, people wanting to talk about speaking to the dead. People wanted to, someone wants to argue with us, I think, talk to us about the fact that they've seen both of us vape nicotine and that being an issue.
Oh,
But before we like dive into that, there's fiscal stuff like civility politics. The way I understand civility politics is people putting additional weight on how gentle and nice and how gracious someone is and whether or not they acted with grace in a specific, you know, circumstance. And if they did, then they did it right. And if they didn't, they did it wrong. And how people have given undue weight to civility in a way that has prevented things from getting better. And, you know, at what point are we playing civility politics versus standing up and saying something? I kind of want your opinion before we dive into the
yeah.
next call.
No, because I think I would say just to start off with, I think your definition, like your description right there, is pretty good. Like I sign off on that. In terms of what we're meaning oftentimes when we're saying civility politics. I don't think that's what I'm talking about though, and here's where I think the difference is because I'm not telling people to be civil for the sake of civility. I'm telling people be civil for the sake of affecting change towards your goal. If you have certain goals, then acting in a certain manner is more likely to achieve those results.
Yeah.
If you do not have those goals, then acting in this manner will not achieve those results. And it depends on what our goals are. I believe there is some good data out there that indicates oftentimes that hardcore, argumentative, I'm going to fight you attitude is not what changes minds. That being said, there is undeniably a section that the only way you make progress is that behavior. And so, who are you speaking to? What is your goal? That's what I'm saying is simply we need to recognize in ourselves, and it's very difficult. It is not an easy task, but what is the purpose of this engagement? When I put on, we do conversations once a month here in Nashville called the Conversation Coalition, and we bring atheists and believers of different stripes together, and we have these conversations, and we are oftentimes purposefully bringing up things that we know we disagree on, right?
Yeah.
Like the goal is to discuss and debate in a sense, but the purpose of those events is specifically about
having those
demonstrating.
discussions.
Right.
But
right.
I guess, and I know this is tangential, but it gets me into people who complain about cancel culture, and this idea that if you have been listened to, and you have genuinely repugnant views, and your repugnant views make you a pariah in the community that you want to be a part of, then that is the responsibility of that's like, hopefully you've been listened to and you have been made a pariah because of your choices.
Yeah, your views have been evaluated logically,
Have been
and
found
yeah, I
wanting.
mean, yes,
And-
yes, yes. Again, that's
yeah.
that section. There absolutely is a section where it's like, look, again, I think I said earlier something about we had talked about like where is the line, and I said like dehumanization, was a
Yeah.
big thing for me, right? So it's at that point, right? People are allowed to have disagreements on tax rates and what color the neighborhood schools should be and stuff. Like, that's fine, right? If
Yeah.
somebody is standing up and is making the argument about like, well, I just think we round up all the insert particular demographic here, it's like, well, we don't be civil to that. We don't turn around to that person and pat him on the head and go, oh, thanks for your ideas. No, of course not. Absolutely. Because I'll tell you exactly why I'm using the same methodology, because in that moment, my goal is very specific. It is very, very specific and focused. And it is defending that line, not allowing the erosion of human rights in that capacity ever, period. It should never be okay that anybody, any ideology goes that far, has that idea. You want to believe in a God? Fine. That's okay. We can argue about that another day when we want to find the truth in battles of epistemologies and shit.
But if
But
you
right
believe,
here, right
yeah,
now,
but if you believe that homosexuality is mental illness or causes someone to be a predator or more likely to be a predator,
that's
or being
a line. That's a line.
Mhm.
That's a line, because
Yeah.
you're dehumanizing.
Yeah.
You are using immutable characteristics about individuals, and you are using that to purposefully attack, criminalize, and make them less than. And we know that leads to demonstrable harm.
Absolutely. And so
Plus, what they're saying is factually incorrect.
Yep.
Like all of that stuff.
I definitely think in the after show we should talk about, people in the live chat are talking about punching Nazis, and I feel like we should have that conversation on Discord and not on YouTube. But we'll definitely do that, just so people know we do hop on to Discord after the show to hang out with fans and just kind of have a more relaxed conversation. And Elliot, you'll be joining us, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, oh my gosh, we've got so many good calls. Let's talk to someone who's called in before and wants to talk about speaking to the dead. Summer in California, you're live on the show.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Elliot.
Hello. So speaking to the dead, what's going on?
So, I kind of wanted to talk about, I know you guys wanted to talk about arguing.
That's okay. No, I will always make room for calls like these. What's up?
Okay. So, my whole family passed away from cancer and COVID in the span of 3 years. And
Jesus.
I have been speaking a lot to people that have been claiming that they can, reach out to their loved ones, and their loved ones are trying to reach out to them and tell them what to do or things like that. And I'm wondering, from a skeptic point of view, is that possible? Because I've seen stories and I've heard claims where, someone has passed and they have come back reincarnated with if they had a gunshot to the head, and they came back as a little child and they had this huge deformity on the side of their head because their previous life, had that happen. So I kind of wanted to talk about, is that possible? Is that something you've heard of? And and what did you guys think about that from a skeptic point of view?
Yeah.
I have thoughts, but Elliot, you go first.
I'll just say this to start off with, Summer. For somebody to come back from the dead, right? There would have to be some singular entity that exists after they die of some kind, right? Like, there would have to be some pinpoint in space and time that we could look to and say, oh, well, that's it. That's all of Summer's memories from when she was in 3rd grade, you know? Or there it is. That's that time SR dropped that pot of macaroni and cheese on his foot, you know? Like, so that would probably be best defined, I think, in some conception of a soul. And that seems to be necessary for this type of afterlife to happen, right? And that's why I have trouble with this thought, because I think there's some pretty good reason to conclude that souls really probably aren't real, you know?
Yeah.
And if
No,
souls
I
aren't
don't
real,
believe in a soul.
then
Yeah.
probably not, you can't come back. So
Yeah. So you
Right.
don't believe in a soul, but you believe in reincarnation. How does that work?
I don't believe in reincarnation. It really, but I do but I think about this. If energy can't be created or destroyed, then where does our energy go when we leave?
It's
yeah, it goes into the other plants and animals around us. The worms eat us, and that gives them, you know, energy to survive, and the plants use us to grow, and that gives them energy to survive. And, you know, like it goes into nature around us. It's honestly even cooler, in my opinion. Like, you literally get to be part of the world around us. You get to be nature, you know? It's super cool. And most likely, again, this is just from the evidence that I've been able to come across in my life, most likely that's how we all started. We all started at some fucking explosion from some star,
well,
and then eventually that coalesces into us. And so now we just get to go back to that. That's awesome. That's beautiful.
Summer, I want you to be able to respond to Elliot before I hop in.
Okay. So I'm super curious person, and I am thinking of becoming that energy and wanting to go to that energy now. And so, because I'm super curious about it, and I don't know, would that be wrong to do?
So let me yeah, I feel like we've got two very specific separate things we're talking about. But the first is what is it to exist? And so I'm going to give you my understanding of it. I feel like a lot of the show has kind of turned into an advice Ask Abby type of thing, and I definitely don't want to do that always. I want to be able to interact and say, hey, you know, how are you? You know, how do you parse those things? So I'm trying to, and I'm biting back, wanting to explain things because I want to get your take on it. When you say energy, what do you mean?
So, so energy, so our perceptions of ourselves, our consciousness.
Okay, is that the same thing as energy to you?
Yes.
Really?
Isn't it?
No. No.
No?
No, we can measure energy. Like, my electric company has a real good idea what energy is because they charge me for it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, they know exactly.
Energy behaves in a well understood way, right? Your microwave produces energy as long as it's plugged in and you turn it on at a certain wavelength. We utilize energy when it comes to using the radio or using cell phone signals. We take in energy visually along a certain spectrum, and in the visible light spectrum. We avoid energy if it's too high above that in the ultraviolet because it'll give us skin cancer. We understand extremely high levels of energy when we're talking about ionizing radiation, right? Going to Chernobyl soon after, that it's gonna do bad for you. And we understand incredibly low energy, right? When it comes to really, really deep, low, long waves of stuff. And so like, we understand what energy is, and consciousness does not fall on that spectrum. So what is consciousness if it's not energy? I have an answer for that if you don't.
Well, it's a life force or chi, right?
No. What is that? That's not energy. We already talked about, we know what energy is. So what is chi?
I guess I'm confused on the difference.
Right. So everything that is conscious because it is sufficiently complex and because that consciousness is an emergent property of that complexity. Right. Now, I'll break that down just a little bit. Having a brain and, having a body, right? You have senses. You've got your eyes, your ears, your nose, your sense of touch, taste, smell, and a brain that is taking in all of that data and making that into a cohesive understanding of the world, right? It's taking all of that in and it's processing all of that. And then it's dropping chemicals to do things to your body and talk to all of that. That is incredibly complex. And in that complexity emerges our consciousness. Now, I firmly believe, Summer, that consciousness requires that brain. It requires all of those systems in place for it to happen. Right? I don't think that it's just like so long as it is taking in that data, it is creating what we perceive as consciousness. In the same way that so long as that microwave is plugged into the wall, you can turn it on and it's going to go. But if you're asking what happens to the microwave when you unplug it, there's no more electricity running through it. And what happens to a person when they're no longer alive? There's no longer signals getting run to a brain that is processing that information and turning that into thoughts. So when you talk about consciousness or you're talking about chi or life force, that makes no sense to me. Because number one, it's not energy. Energy is a weird way for people who don't understand what electricity is to try and justify weird beliefs. It just is. And so what is chi? Not all of that feels archaic and not founded in reality.
Okay, well, I get that, but then why did Eliot say that then our energy or spirit moves into plants and animals and things like that?
I would love to explain that, but I feel like Eliot would probably prefer to explain it himself. Uh-oh, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Yeah. I'm using a different terminology. I'm using a different terminology than what you're using, right? So when I'm talking about your energy, what I'm saying is just the bonds that make up your cells, right? Like everything that is you, there's energy inside of you, right? Like this is what your body does. The reason that we can move is because your cells produce energy, right? And eventually that'll be broken down and that'll go into things like, helping plants grow. But it's not the same type of energy. It's not the same as like electricity or anything. They're very different.
I don't know. I'm sure both of you remember, freshman biology in high school when you learned that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about caloric energy, right? You're talking about taking in nutrients and your body converting those nutrients chemically into something that it can actually turn into electricity, actual energy that you can measure, right? What happens to your body? Yeah, like Elliot said, that caloric energy, right? Doesn't just go away, but it is not conscious. So getting to what you said next, which is that bigger question, is Summer.
Yeah.
I assume that there's life in the universe outside of Earth. It feels like it's too.
You do?
Yeah, I feel like it's way too big of a universe for this to be the only place for life to have happened. And I don't think we're ever going to experience it because that's an entire other conversation that I'd be happy to have, but it's not it's not relevant right now. But there are way more things, countless more things in this universe that are not conscious than are. Right? So us being here for this time that we have, this tiny little universal blip of our existence, of our consciousness, being able to take that in and understand the world around us is so rare. And it is so much more rare than anyone realizes. Somebody made a point to me that what is the most rare thing in the universe? What is the most rare like substance in the universe? Right? If you were to look up resources, right? Is it gold? Is it diamond? Is it platinum? Actually, no. There are asteroids that are full of that shit, right? Is it rare minerals, or radioactive isotopes? No, because there are places in the universe where there are tons of that stuff. You know what there aren't a ton of? Trees. Wood is probably universally one of the rarest and hardest to obtain resources.
I've heard you say that.
Right? Isn't that amazing? We don't realize that the trees in our backyard are creating a resource that you're not going to be able to get, light years away. And so in that way, we're taking for granted the complexity and the beauty of this singular, incredible life that we're having and that we're getting to experience with everyone else and all of the other things, all the other, that is so beautiful that it's already a tragedy that most of the universe can't experience itself. And we are the tiny, tiny situation where we can, where we are a piece of the universe, right? We are made up of the same elements as everything else, and yet we are conceiving of it. We're talking about it. That's so beautiful. It's already a tragedy that there's not enough consciousness out there. And for that consciousness to be snuffed out or to leave early feels to me cosmically tragic, cosmically unfair.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. And again, I would just say that, in the sense of coming back after this life, it just feels to me that the likelihood is so incredibly low, right? Not to say that, there definitely isn't some other type of experience after this one we know we've got, right?
I don't know. I'm specifically saying there isn't.
You think they're just definitively, absolutely? I just feel like that's a stance you can't fully prove. Like I just feel like that's a line.
I don't know. I think you could, if you could prove
Okay.
that your consciousness is tied to having a brain. Then once there's not a brain there, then there's not a consciousness by definition, right? It's like saying, how does the car exist after it has been melted down and turned into a yard art sculpture? Is that, okay, it's the same metal, but it's not a car anymore. You can't drive it anymore.
I don't know that proves that there's not experience afterwards still.
But isn't experience, doesn't your brain need to collect that information to turn that to make that into experience? Like it's collecting all this data. It's collecting what your ears are hearing, what your eyes are seeing, and comparing that to all the times that you've seen and heard other things, so it'll make sense contextually.
Yeah, that's currently our understanding. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I don't know how you can. It's kind of like the stance of saying like the difference between like Jesus did not exist in history versus like there wasn't this magical Jew who, made loaves and fishes for a fact, right? It's like that. I think the second one is one where we can defend it, right? Whereas that first one, it puts a burden that it's just like, man, how do you ever show somebody didn't exist? That seems like there's a hurdle there. So like standing on there absolutely is not experience after the brain deteriorates seems to me like, maybe that's just a little bit harder of a stance than we need to take, you know?
I don't know. I take the
But
engine out of a car and I can pretty definitively say that it's not going to start.
yeah, right. But that's because we
I
have
mean, like,
only experiences of cars working, with their engines. We have disconfirmation on the other side,
right.
specifically pulling it out, right? Like I don't know that I don't know that you
I,
again, I don't know that you can even definitively say in that always 100% of the time taking the engine out of a car,
well,
unless
like,
unless you're saying,
yeah, like unless I'm
I
holding
guess,
out hope that the love bug exists, I'm pretty sure that, you know what I mean? But Summer,
well,
like, I want your opinion. If we live in a universe where your consciousness is here and then when it's gone for good, how does that impact what your view on it?
Well, I want to explore it, Eric. I want to find that answer. And I want to know how to find that answer. And I want to know where to look for that answer.
What's
And so I
what's the
guess
question you want the answer for?
I want the answer to know is whether or not I can talk to my family. I want to know whether or not I can go there when I leave.
I would look into neuroscience. I mean, do you let me start with this at least, Summer. Do you think that there's a really good correlation between the brain and that consciousness? Like,
Well, because I've been studying, I've done a lot of very high doses of, mushrooms and other types of things that, we won't talk about on YouTube. But
sure.
but it seems like I've actually been to those places. And I
Hmm.
get that it messes with my brain chemistry, but we still don't have an understanding of what actually happens when we leave. And so
Yeah,
I
but
want
it
to know
sounds
where
like,
it's,
let me just jump in for a second, Summer. I just want to make sure we're on the same page though, because
yeah,
I think you already have the answer, honestly, that you're looking for. Because right there, even, it sounded like you were agreeing that, yeah, that those experiences that you were having have something to do with the brain chemistry, right? Maybe not
yeah,
100%, maybe there's other stuff going on, but we can definitely agree on that. If we can, plant a flag in anything, it's that this stuff involves brainy, thoughty stuff, right? Are we on the same page there, Summer?
brainy, thoughty stuff, very
Yeah,
technical.
Right?
yeah, exactly. It's what all the PhDs use. I'm positive. Fight me on that. No, but if that's the case, right? If we all agree that at least there is something that involves the brain in all of this, I think that is the exact place to start. And go look into what some people have said, right? Like there's this philosopher, and she mainly focuses on like consciousness and stuff, Patricia Churchland. There's all kinds of different people out there that you can go listen to what they have discovered, and they show it to you. They provide you the data, right? They're not just hiding it and keeping it mysterious. They're saying, look, we hooked people up to machines and we tested this over and over and over, and this is how the brain works in this capacity. I think that is a fantastic place to start because, again, at the very least, the brain is involved in some way. Maybe there's some supernatural stuff going on. Maybe there's some quantum-y, who knows what's it, right? But definitely the brain is involved. And so understanding more about neuroscience in general, I think, is going to help help you come to more solid conclusions here.
Yeah.
I
But would it be wrong if I went on purpose to that place?
well, I don't think it's a place.
Yeah,
I think, and I think that there's, so here is the next part, because like we've talked about the is, right? The ontology of consciousness and all of that. But it's trickier when we're thinking about ought, you know, the way a thing ought to be, because if you want to absolutely bore yourself to tears, read Jean-Paul Sartre. He actually wrote a book called Being and Nothingness, which
I've read it.
you have, you fucking
Uh-huh.
saint. How did you? The absolute slog that is Being and Nothingness. You actually read that? Holy
In
shit.
college.
That is brutal. But it like what Sartre had to say was that we, number one, are the ones deciding to give value to things. We are the givers of value. And we decide to do with that what we want to do. And he argued that we have obligations with that to help others. And he had some really good arguments for it. But what I want to focus on is that value part, right? For me, if I put myself in your shoes, the only, like, I've had people very close to me die, but not as many people as you. And so my response is not going to be as, I don't have the kind of understanding that you do. But the best I can do is give you experiences that I've been through that may be similar. So I don't want you to think that I'm trying to equivocate, because I'm not. I recognize that the hurt that you're feeling is unique and yours, and I can't take that away. As much as I wish that I could take that away from you, I can't. But I can tell you that growing up, there were a lot of uncertain things in my life around me. But there were one or two people, right? A big person in my life was my grandma. I was incredibly close with my grandmother. She was someone who I lived with for, you know, because being at home was not safe for a while. She was always there. She was my rock. And when she died, the family changed. She was the glue that held everything together. She was this voice that said, you know, that we need to be together. She was the voice of the family, and everyone knew it. She was this unifying force, and not only that, but she was this source of love, just unimaginable amounts of love. Anyone that I brought over, my grandma loved them. And her reasoning is because if my Eric loves you, then I love you. Because if Eric loves you, that is enough for me.
My mom was exactly the same way. You
Yeah?
were talking about my mom, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I'm really glad we have that in common. I hate that the world doesn't get to have my grandma. I hate it. And I hate that I don't get to have her. But if the only way that people are going to have any bit of that experience is if I pass it on, it's up to the memory of my grandma for me to live with love in my life, because that's the only way that I'm going to get to share and perpetuate the best parts of what I had from her. I feel like I have an obligation. And that obligation is to share and perpetuate the kind of love and I don't think I'm doing a good job, Summer, but I'm trying. And I think, I don't know. I feel like if that family is gone, then you're one of the few ties to the world that they still have. Their impact. You get to share that. You get to be the product of that. Perpetuating that is, at least to me, something that you should do. There's the ought. And Sartre said that we
I
get to
know.
decide it for ourselves. So I'm deciding it. So me. What are you deciding?
I don't know. I'm crying because I miss my mom so much and I want to see her again. And
I know.
I feel like I want to go and see her again. And I don't know how to do that. And my mom was the exact same way about your grandma. And I don't know, Eric. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
But what if it would suck? It would suck to show up somewhere expecting a party and there not being anyone there.
Right.
And if leaving this mortal plane was happening so you could see someone and it turns out that you were sold a false bill of goods, it feels like I know I've used this example with you before. You know, the whole getting sold a lie, right? Somebody tells you you're going to get $1 million next week. And you think about it and you go, oh, it's going to be so good. And you make plans for what you're going to do with that $1 million when you get it next week. And then next week comes and you don't get the $1 million. Well, that sucks. You never had it, so it shouldn't be a big difference. But since you've been told you're going to get it, now that you don't have it, you feel like you lost something. Even if you didn't have it in the first place. I feel like life after death is like that. It's selling you on this wonderful idea. And because we got sold on it, now we have to grieve again because you feel like you lost something. I think that's one of the most painful, most tragic things that religion has done to people, is sold them on that idea. But if it's up to you to perpetuate and continue the love that your mom showed, what would your mom think about it?
I don't know.
Well, I think that the idea of my grandma's unending disappointment in me if I decided to check out early has been enough to keep me here more than once.
Really?
Yeah. And it sucks. I mean, geez, you know, I point to French philosophers and to live is to suffer. You know, it's like a trope, but it is. But I'll have an infinite amount of time to not be alive. And I wasn't alive for so long that the small amount of time that I have is nothing else and nothing in comparison. So might as well. Let's do it. Let's hang in. But
Even if it's miserable?
Yeah. I'd rather be miserable than not experiencing anything.
Really?
I spent so trigger warning, self-harm. Just so people are aware. I spent quite a long time as someone with clinical depression thinking about that. And I know it's not going to go away. And I also wouldn't get to have my cat if I checked out early. And I wouldn't get to talk to you. And I wouldn't get to talk to Elliot. And when the depression is really, really hard, sometimes that feels like it's small consolation. But we got to see this through. The fact is you have got more people to help. And you've got a lot more
I feel
love to share.
invisible. I feel like there isn't people to help. Sorry, I don't want to turn this into like a therapy session, like you
No,
said.
but I
I mean,
do.
just,
But that is a good term right there. Therapy. I think that seeing a professional and getting on
I'm doing
medication.
that.
Are you getting on medication? Or are you talking to somebody who can prescribe?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Good, because me too. And let me tell you something. That's like diabetes medication for me. Like it's necessary. And you need to hang in there. Because I think that you're going
But
to, there are people you've never met who you're going to be a mentor for. And they need you still.
yeah, I guess I'm scared to share my story
Why?
because of what's happening politically.
Yeah, but you are one of the most openly questioning people that I've spoken to. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many people would not have voted for Trump if they would have questioned as much as you do?
I know, I get that.
Yeah, so what kind of influence would you be if you didn't get to share that?
I just feel like people don't listen anymore.
But you do.
And that's my problem, Eric and Elliot. I think you should know, like, I transformed from being, this right wing Christian nationalist to a left wing, liberal and atheist, and I can't figure out how to tell my past self that I was wrong.
Really? Sometimes I wake up and I'm so glad that I get to be like, didn't it hurt though to change? I feel like personal growth always sucks. It
Yeah,
always hurts. Because you're always finding out that you were wrong and then you're suffering the consequences of that. And then that's the only time that I wind up learning and growing.
exactly.
Right. Growth is
And I
pain.
want people not to have to go through what I've gone through.
But
Like the only reason I went through it was because I lost my whole family and I had to think for myself. But now, like I want people to know that they don't have to go through what I did to learn what I did.
but
Yeah.
part of the human condition is that everyone needs to grow, and growing is painful. So you're in pain, Summer. So you now have the opportunity to decide what kind of growth is going to come from it. Because whoever comes out on the other side of this is going to be a different and better version of you.
And I think you just said it right there, Summer. Like honestly, just in the last few seconds, I think again you've already got these answers to these questions, You said the exact reason to wake up tomorrow is because you you know the hurt that you've experienced, and you want to let others know that they don't have to experience that either, right? You want to
Right.
show other people that there's a better way forward. Let's do that. Let's do that together. Like that's one of the biggest reasons I've ever done any of this stuff, was because I saw the harm, right? I have so many friends in this space that have absolutely traumatic experiences with religious community. And I wanted to show other people, hey, look what they've been through. See this terrible experience and know that we can do better. Know that we can make tomorrow one where that never happens again. And in the process, I wanted to show people the amazing experience that I had with community. The idea of being able to truly gather together and love each other and support each other and care for people. That is so fucking powerful. That's what gets me up. That's what makes me wanna get the fuck out and do something. That's what gets me antsy and gets me excited. Now that doesn't mean that I don't struggle. That doesn't mean that I don't have down times. I absolutely do. For me personally, it's really interesting. I go through a cycle. I mean, I literally about every 4 to 5 weeks, there's a week where I am just down, I am low, I'm not interested, I'm not happy. I know that that's the case. And one of the biggest things that I've been able to do, and this has been, with help from my therapist, I see every couple of weeks, um, which I found, by the way, through the Secular Therapy Project. What an amazing, amazing organization. But what I do now is I track it. And so what ends up happening is, I'll wake up one day and I just won't be feeling super good, and I won't really know why I don't feel good. It's so weird. It always takes me by surprise. But then I go back and I look in the calendar and I kind of see about, where I'm at. And more often than not, like, it's pretty spot on. And what that does is it gives me the ability to at least recognize how I'm feeling in this moment and understand that, yeah, today's going to be a bit of a struggle for me. And it might be harder for me to find that thing that gives me that fire that makes me want to go. I don't feel like the community is as strong as it should be, or thriving in the way that it should be, or I just feel like people aren't listening, and people are just causing harm and stuff, and I can't see that goodness. And that's okay, because one of the coolest things that we can do in those moments is rely on other people. And there are other people, right? Whether it's people in your life, around you personally, close by, right? Call somebody up, go on a walk, or whether it's people in this community or other spaces online. I promise you, Summer, at this point, with the people that you're connected to in this community alone, there is one of these motherfuckers always available to have a chat with you. I tell you, man,
Uh,
I am scrolling through Discord communities and
uh,
YouTube channels, and there is always somebody
Elliot,
out there.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass. I'm gonna pass to you for just a second. To continue with Summer, I'm gonna make an adjustment. Behind the
Oh
scenes,
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be right back.
yeah, no worries. But yeah, I mean, just all of that to kind of wrap up, and we'll throw it back to you, Summer. But um, I think I think you do have the answers to these questions, and I think one of the things you're realizing is that it's still going to be difficult. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, and I'm not going to tell you that, nah, you'll wake up tomorrow, girl, and you'll fucking have it all. It'll be easy. Like, you'll never feel anxious again, and all your dreams will come. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be real with you. And what that means is that we have to assess the data honestly. And yeah, it's going to be kind of tough. It will be, and it's not going to be, you know there's going to be some hurt, from past stuff that comes up again. And there's going to be new stuff that comes up out of nowhere, and it takes us by surprise, and it's going to knock us down for a little bit. And there's probably going to be some times where we feel like we don't want to get up. And that's okay. That we're not fucking Superman. We're not invincible, right? And it's good that we take those moments for ourselves, and we have that opportunity to collect ourselves and sit down for a few minutes. It's okay. We don't have to get up right away. But remember that the reason that we're even where we are right now, like, sure, maybe we are waist deep in shit, and every single direction that we look is just 3 feet of shit. But remember,
Yeah.
we were neck deep in shit at one point.
I came in at a weird time.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of check in. Summer, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah. So I'll let you move on to other callers, but I want to ask one piece of advice. I was asked to be on the Buck Angel podcast,
Okay.
to talk about my story.
Uh-huh.
And, he's got a really big following,
He does.
but I'm scared to talk about my story and expose who I am. And would you guys recommend that I get on there and tell my story, or do you think it's safer for me to be quiet?
So I think that when it comes to talking about yourself, you are the best expert. And I don't think there's anybody being hurt by you sharing your story. I think talking and all of that can be really cathartic and really useful. Personally, I have a problem with Buck Angel. I'm not a fan. And that's because I think that Buck Angel has expressed some viewpoints around sex and gender and medical necessity of things in ways that feel really icky to me. So like for entirely different reasons, I wouldn't go on Buck Angel, but not
Okay.
because I didn't want to share my story. You know what I mean? That talk. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I'll just get kind of second Eric's personal thoughts there on Buck. Um, Also, though, I am a huge believer in people sharing their stories when they are safe and they are comfortable. I think it is absolutely absurd to say that every single person has to put themselves on the front line and make themselves vulnerable like that. No, you have to assess your situation and decide for yourself that you are safe, whether that is physically, whether that is mentally and emotionally, whether that is financially. All of those factors are deeply important. And I am never going to tell somebody, somebody that is living in the middle of Iran, right? That is a queer atheist. Like, man, you stay silent, okay? Because you existing is the biggest fucking protest, is the biggest fu to the other side that could ever exist, right? All that being said, Summer, I'm a huge fan of people telling their stories, and in part because I love history so much. And one of the biggest things that historians want as the years go on and we get further and further away from events, one of the biggest things that people want is just the individual story. I just want to hear what the average person was doing on a Tuesday way back then, because that is some of the most fascinating stuff out there. The truly human aspect of ourselves getting to show forth, forever in perpetuity. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, think about it. I know you'll call us back, so
Yeah.
let us know how it goes, and yeah, I can't wait to hear it. So
And definitely look into the criticisms of Buck Angel, because
yeah, see what you think. Make
Yeah.
your decisions, But
definitely. And if you get the chance, challenge him. Please do. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like that's an entire other topic that I'd love to get into. That's probably not appropriate right now, but
yeah.
Right.
yeah.
But thanks so much. I love the new format of the show and having guests. And I'm a huge fan, Elliot. I've been watching your stuff, and I love you guys. And
Thank
have a great rest of your show.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you too.
Take care.
Or just a good day. You're not doing a show.
Good rest of the day. Yeah, for sure. That's what we meant.
All the world's a stage. Everybody's a player.
Oh,
Something
jeez.
along those lines.
Bye, Summer.
Is that in the public domain yet? Am I allowed to say that? Is that legal?
Isn't that Shakespeare?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
teasing.
you're solid.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
solid.
yeah.
You're solid.
Yeah.
You're solid. I have a caller who wants to talk about money, and I think that like philosophy around money is really fun.
Okay.
I do two things. Most importantly, we are both just two assholes on the internet, And for people who are experiencing and are in the depths of depression, anxiety,
Mm.
all of that, that like if you were a very religious person, the Secular Therapy Project is a great resource to check out. But also, you go to the doctor if you're feeling sick. So if you're feeling unwell, then going to the doctor is the right thing to do. And that is true for mental things as well.
Yep.
And it's advice that we both live by and we both recommend fully to everyone listening. Okay, now Buck Angel for just like a minute, okay? Can we just talk for just like a minute about Buck Angel? I promise I won't take too long, but please, it's going to eat me alive if I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know who Buck Angel is and all that stuff, yeah? Okay, so
I have a tangential understanding. Yes, it's not
Okay.
exactly in the category of things that I'm interested in, but
no
still.
worries. Well, so Buck Angel was, I don't think is anymore, but was, or might still be, I don't know, a porn star, a trans man, who really, really became a trans man when things were rough for trans folks,
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
And that meant that Buck Angel internalized a lot of stuff, and had to live through and go through a world that really was pretty hostile. I think Buck has internalized some really weird things that make it harder for everyone else, specifically around transitioning and around gender identity. So, like, to be very, very clear, if you know someone who has transitioned and is now a man, he likes to be called him. He worked really hard for it, you know? So using the right pronouns for someone who has transitioned into a binary gender, him or her, using the pronouns that they've worked really hard for, have done a lot of, to get to, respect it. That's somebody who wants to be called him, and he is called that, and that's the way it should be. And Buck, I think, has fully expressed a dislike of non-binary, that either you are one or you are the other, when the fact is that maybe that felt like the case when Buck was younger, but we live in a world that has more room in it for other people. And so to say that it doesn't exist or shouldn't exist, I feel like takes the color out of the world, and I don't like it. And I think that it is deeply dismissive of non-binary folks. Also,
And factually inaccurate.
right.
I mean, if you care about the truth is thus, and you just have to accept that. I don't care about your feelings on it. Like, it is the case that bisexual people are real, non-binary people are real, asexual people are real.
Yep.
Like, there is a spectrum when it comes to, there is a diversity when it comes to gender and sex, no matter how you classify those things. Like, if you're talking about gametes, if you're talking about presentation, like all of these things, like I don't care that you want it to be in these cute little neat categories, right? Like, the world is just more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Like, I get that you only see red and blue, or you only want to see red and blue. Like, that's fine, but just so you know,
Purple exists. So does green and orange and yellow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so there's that. And then one other thing, and I'll be off my Buck Angel tangent, I promise. So Summer called in a while back about, trans issues and viewing some things as delusional that were really icky for me. And what I did, I called them true scum, and I was corrected later. It's called bioessentialism. And for people who want to know more about it, I highly recommend you look into it. It is a whole rabbit trail to go down, about what makes a man, what makes a woman, what makes us the gender we are, and how we all of that. Essentially, if you are in the trans community and you hold those bioessentialist views, then you are true scum. So that would be Buck Angel. Buck Angel believes that for someone to be legitimately recognized as trans, they need to want to, and if they can, need to follow through with fully medically transitioning. Otherwise, they're illegitimate in his mind. Number one, he's a hypocrite because he hasn't. And when called out on it, he just tells people to shut up. But number two, I know plenty of trans folks who have tried transitioning and for whatever reason, medically, have been like, I can't do all of those things, or financially, I can't do all of those things. That does not delegitimize their experience, and it doesn't delegitimize who they are. And so it is a level of gatekeeping in a community that is already facing a whole bunch of shit. And it's divisive for no reason other than to what? Make Buck Angel feel better about himself? Fuck that. So now I'm off my soapbox. Is there anything you want to add before we move to the next topic?
No, I was going to ask a question and it would take us down a rabbit hole, so it's totally not worth it. We don't need to spend more time talking about him.
Fair enough. All right, let's change gears. Talk to Drew in New Mexico. Drew, you're live on the show.
Hey, Eric, SR, big fan. Love you guys both. Well, really appreciate what you do, but I'd like to kind of just jump on in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm filling out the lower third, so talk to us. What's going on?
Well, I feel like because, America is a capitalist country, there's like this zeitgeist of what money is and how it works, and it's just wrong, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
I feel like most people in America feel like money is this inherently valuable thing that the government issues, and then they charge taxes so that they can pay for things. And that's not how things work. Nothing is inherently valuable until there's a demand for it. And the way governments create demand for their currency is by charging taxes, giving everyone a reason to have money, because they have to pay taxes.
Really?
Yeah, and you can't pay your taxes in euros. You have to pay in dollars. Now, the U.S. has an extra step where the dollar is the de facto currency for oil.
Well, hold on a second.
Not every country can do that.
Hold on. You said that taxes are the only reason why money has value.
Well, initially, yes. I mean, there's a little more to it than that once it starts becoming traded, and the government has to issue more money than they charge in taxes so that the excess can be traded. But the initial thing that a government has to do to give money value in the first place is only accept taxes in that currency.
Interesting. Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah, I would push back on that.
Well, what gives an Australian dollar value then?
Faith in the government.
Confidence in the currency by the people who are trading it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you and I started an island popped up in the middle of the South Pacific, mm-hmm. and 1 million people moved there, and people started trading things, mm-hmm. and we wanted them to use our currency, we issue the currency, but we don't necessarily have a reason for them to use that currency over some other method of trade.
Well, so here's the thing is what they decide to use as currency is going to be what's useful for them. They're going to need to somehow tokenize their labor so that they can trade with each other in a third party way, right? If you raise goats, not everybody takes goats as payment, but some people do. And, and being able to tokenize that trade is incredibly important. And it's gone back in society for longer than capitalism has existed. So
it certainly is an expedient for trade, absolutely. But trade existed before money, and money was initially a way of charging taxes.
No.
The very first money that we find archaeologically were tax tokens.
So that's because the written word is only so long, but currency has been around for longer than we've been writing about it. And it exists long. So I understand what you're saying, but I think that I have an example to the contrary. So here's my counter here. People have realized that currency is just how much confidence you have in it, and its value is maintained by consensus. Now, governments have figured out how to monopolize that, but governments have not always monopolized that. For a long time, we just traded in rare metals, right? There was a long time that governments tied their
But
currency to
rare
an amount
metals
of
are
gold.
not inherently valuable either.
But the government doesn't make the rare metal valuable. It's the people who are trading it who do, right? We're talking about gold, right? Things like that. But before that,
Then why did they stamp it into coins instead of just trading it by weight?
but they did. They did trade it by weight.
Yeah, they stamped it into
Wh-
coins just so that it was easy to count. It was just a
Okay, but-
standardized. It was just a standard methodology, so that if we have 1 ounce of gold in front of us, 1 ounce of gold and 1 ounce of gold and 1 ounce of gold, it makes 3 ounces of gold. It's a lot easier than just saying like, well, here's some chunk. I don't know. Maybe it's 4. Maybe it's 5.5. Let me cut a little bit off. Like, no, standardize that shit.
Yeah. I
But still, the precious metals that we call precious metals aren't inherently valuable. They're just
Correct.
really hard to fake.
no, they're valuable. They don't tarnish the same way other metals do, which is why they're used in jewelry. In the same way, like I have in my heritage.
Yeah, but I can buy non-tarnishable jewelry today for $5. That if it was gold, it would be $500.
Right.
Yeah, but
So what's the
I'm
next
just
part?
saying that
But what's the next
Yeah,
part?
that it's the gold. The gold is not inherently valuable on its own.
No, we
Yeah,
are the ones who
not-
give it value.
Yeah, neither of us are saying that. Just so you know, Drew. Like neither Eric nor myself are saying that if all human beings just stopped existing, there would be any inherent value in like platinum over aluminum. Like that's not what we're saying.
And-
What we're saying
I'm
is that the world that we exist in is one that before governments started printing money, there was already this system of value that included these types of metals. And what people did as a way to make it easier for them to involve in this trade was they standardized this system. And again, yeah, man, like gold doesn't have any inherent value, but in the system that existed, people already valued gold. And so what they did was they just said, look, if we just make this as a token that's the same that I have, that Bill has, that Terry in the town over has, well shit, we can just trade back and forth between each other super easy, and we all know we're not getting fucked. Like that's all we're trying to say here. Again, neither of us are saying there's inherent value.
I'm actually saying
Right.
there could be. So
Okay.
like going back to what I was saying earlier was I was looking into Aztec heritage because I have Aztec in my blood. Do you know what the Aztecs used for currency? Cacao beans.
What?
Cacao beans.
Oh yeah, that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah.
And there's places in South America too where they currently use cocaine as a currency.
Oh, geez. Or we could talk about cowrie shells on the West Coast. But
Yeah.
regardless, right? None of those are taxed by a government entity, but they are still being used, right? Did you ever hear the story about the island of Yap?
No.
No, they would fashion these giant wheels out of stone. I mean, huge wheels of stone, and they acted as currency.
Wow.
Yeah, and they would trade these massive stone wheels. And what's funny is they were too big to move often, so they wouldn't necessarily always move. It would just be ownership of the giant stone. So
I still say that while there are other ways that money accrues value through trade, the initial way that a government has to do it is by charging taxes only in the currency, only in gold, only in silver, only in,
Given multiple examples that disproves that.
Yeah.
Right? We've given multiple examples now that disprove that you agree, like, oh yeah, okay, that's a thing, like that happened. Like, so like
Okay,
I get
well,
what you're saying
cacao
that
beans and stuff are used up, and the other things, I won't say it again, that are currently used for trade in certain places like Bolivia, they get traded for things, and eventually it makes it out and gets sold for dollars, usually.
So before currency, like, well, not before currency, but concurrent with it, governments had other ways of taxes. So what is taxation but a community pot? Right, the community wants to make sure that they maintain a road or whatever, then they need to pay someone in a way that is beneficial for them. And so,
That goes into the other part of what I was saying too, is that the government has to have a certain amount of taxes to be able to pay for things.
Right. And totally understood. And I think that there is a broader conversation to be had here about the way that
they don't
governments
exactly,
tax.
though, is what I'm saying. Because they issue money all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And any way a government pays anybody, whether it's an employee, a contractor, through social programs, whatever, those are all ways that the government issues the money. And there does have to be sort of a balance between the amount of taxes paid and the amount of money issued, and then another balance between the other thing, but they're not really directly related. We don't have to pay for everything we do because the money is just kind of issued in other places, and we could just take it away from those places, stop issuing it as much through banks. And that's another thing, too. Like, the major way the Federal Reserve issues money in America is through banks.
Okay.
And the only people that have access to that money are those that can get loans.
Okay, but hold on a second. So I understand what you're saying, but I think you're putting the cart before the horse here.
Okay.
I feel like there are a whole lot of people who have just gotten really excited about crypto because crypto is an example of a currency that people have made up whole cloth, invented a...
It's not a currency, but yeah.
Oh, it is. It is. It is absolutely a currency. A Bitcoin is a currency.
I mean, it has value, but I can't just go to the store and anywhere, literally, except for, I think, one country is currently accepting it as, was it Bolivia or, no, Ecuador? No, somewhere down there in Central America, not South America.
So then I think that disproves your point.
Yeah.
The United States does not recognize
but
it as a fiat
that's also
currency,
just
but
a
it is
very
still a
recent
currency.
thing too, and I don't think it's worth anything.
But it's worth tens of thousands of dollars to a lot of people if you hold one Bitcoin, and also like. Just to be clear, even in the history of the United States, right? Like I know we have a lot of international viewers, and so just to like, in the history of the United States, there was decentralized banking for a very long time. It wasn't until Andrew Jackson came in and established a federal bank that you had a centralized currency. Before that, it existed from bank to bank, state to state, and that currency was just promissory notes of transferring, whatever amount of gold they deemed that. And so the standardization was just all over the place. So again, right, I don't think currency is tied necessarily to taxes or to government or derive their value from taxes or a government. Although currently I understand that you are talking about our system right now. I just don't think that it sounds like you were saying that money has value because governments tax, and I don't think that is correct. And I might have gotten what you were saying wrong, but I would love.
I think that money has to have a demand.
Sure,
and like with cacao beans, the demand was that rich people wanted them. And they could trade things for those things, and then eventually, rich people would consume the product. But the point is that there was a demand for cacao beans, and I'm guessing there was some kind of demand for these giant stones, whether it be status or something.
Definitely status. It was wild. There are stories of like, let's say, I don't know, I wanted to buy something big from Elliot. So cool. this giant stone in my yard. We're not going to move it, but everyone in town is just going to know that that stone in my yard is now Elliot's.
Take it.
I'm just saying that one of the ways in which money accrues value is by people having to pay taxes in that currency. I'm not saying that that's the only way once it starts getting traded throughout, but that's the initial way that governments have to create a value for their currency, because otherwise you're trading consumable goods or something other that has value to society in some way. But when you come to like a fiat currency like the euro or the dollar or the Canadian dollar or whatever, when they have to create a demand to give it value, and the way that the initial first thing they have to do is to charge taxes on it.
So that's where we part, right, Drew? So you made one statement where you said, like, you know, one way, an avenue that governments create value.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. You're right.
Versus the way, the initial.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
My distinction is. So I'll say, hey, I'm with you, Drew, when you say, well, I think one way governments, prop up the value of their fiat currency is by taxation, right? Like, okay, yeah, I could see that. But then when you say, like, it's the only way, or if you say it's the initial way, that's where Eric and I are saying, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
We've got these other examples that indicate that doesn't seem to be the case. An avenue, a way, sure.
Okay.
Only beginning? Nah.
Okay. Well, again, back to the second part where every dollar that the government issues has to be paid for. That's obviously not true, because the government issues a lot of money through banks.
Yeah.
That doesn't get paid for.
Well,
sometimes banks can even have 10 times the amount of money loaned out that they have in deposits, because they get the money from the Federal Reserve on loan.
So right, that's where the confidence in the government issuing the currency comes back, right? So that confidence is not just simply like, yay, America, we like our country. It's literally the fact that, for instance, if tomorrow the sun rises and absolute shit hits the fan, the road to my house is still going to exist. The power lines that bring power, that keep me warm, those are still going to exist, right? The dam down the road that provides electricity for people, that's still going to, the building that is the hospital, all of the nurses and the doctors, all of the teachers, and all of these things are still going to exist. So that confidence isn't just about, like, yay, I love my country. It literally also relates to tangible infrastructure, right? One reason why the euro is valued the way that it is because of the fact that there are all of these different countries that are interconnected that prop it up. And that means the likelihood that this currency is just going to plummet tomorrow and suddenly be worth absolutely nothing, that likelihood is a lot lower. It is a lot more assured to stay at this value tomorrow and the next day, because underneath that confidence is the fact that Austria is a country, is the fact that Italy has an infrastructure, Germany is super successful and has $1 million companies that make tangible goods that get sent around to the world that people want. So that confidence is not just like thin air magic stuff. There's actual things to point to, that underlie that.
The point is still that the government issues a lot more money in various ways, and any way that the government pays out money is issuing money. You know,
So no, and yes, and all of the above. It's so frustrating. Like, I I want to be clear that if the reason we're talking about money, people in the live chat, why are we talking about money? Because it is a fiction that everybody is taking a part in, and it makes and breaks people. So why are we all part of this fiction? Which
I'm
is
talking
wild.
about it because you talked about socialism last week, and I'm a socialist, and I'm trying to get out there that the government doesn't just have to issue money through banks. They issue it through social programs. They issue it through through paying contractors, through paying employees. They issue it in all kinds of ways, and the amount of money that a government issues doesn't have to equal the amount of money they take in taxes, because that doesn't make any sense.
Actually, it used to. It did for a very long time. And
But it
again,
doesn't now.
yeah. And I just want to clarify for people who do not live in the United States, who do not have the shared historic understanding that we have and that we bring contextually to it. In the United States, for a very long time, our currency was tied to gold. So if the United States had a gold reserve so big, or a bank had a gold reserve so big that when they issued a note, it was based upon a fraction of that gold reserve, because that is how much they could pay out, right? You could put out 10 notes, and those 10 notes would have a whole lot of value if you had a bunch of gold. But if you had the same amount of gold and you put out 10,000 notes, those 10,000 notes would be worth, right, 1/10,000th of the value that they had. In the last 100 years, there was a change from moving from, the gold standard here in the United States. There was famously, William Jennings Bryan said, Americans won't be crucified on a cross of gold, that there's not enough money to go around because we're sitting and waiting for the Federal Reserve to hold on to all this money. And so it moved into this kind of conceptual space where it is now, where what you're saying makes sense. And so I want to make sure that what you're saying is contextual, that we're recognizing that we're not tied to fiat currency the way that we have for all of time. This is a very modern incarnation of money that we're talking about right now.
Right. When there was a finite amount of literal money, gold, then we could only issue so much. But like back in 2008, when the big financial crisis happened, they did quantitative easement, and sure, inflation went up a little bit, but it didn't really. The amount of money that was in the system didn't really affect inflation that much. What usually affects inflation is access to resources. During the pandemic, there weren't resources to go around, so prices started going up.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's not really necessarily tied to the total supply of money directly, although it does have some effect. Usually, when there's hyperinflation, government prints money in response to inflation, not prints money and creates inflation. It goes the other way.
I think that that's a bigger conversation to have another time. I think that applying skepticism and philosophy to things that we take for granted, like money, is a great way for us to break apart from our concepts of how necessary government is, what taxes are, and what we should and ought to be, owing to each other and accepting for ourselves. So I do think this is a worthwhile conversation, and I feel like...
And you've given me a lot to think about, because, I've been thinking about things in a very modern context, and maybe it's not quite as simple as I was making it out to be when I first called.
Well, it definitely sounds like you're coming in with an understanding that not everyone has, especially not people in the United States, because we have a pretty unique history, around these things. And because of that...
I've been listening to Sam Cedar, so...
I haven't heard from Sam. I haven't seen that in a long time. But Drew, Elliot, was there anything else before we start wrapping up?
Just a big fan of you guys. Love you both. I really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right, stay safe.
Take care. You too.
Yeah. Money's a fun conversation. I'll say this just because there are people out there, and you probably know some people like this. They they have a great love for the hard sciences,
Mhm.
you know, the mathematics of it all, the physics, right? But they really want to poo-poo, and they want to shit on the psychology and the sociology of it all, right? And I just want to say this for anybody that knows somebody in that camp, or you yourself agree with that sentiment. Economics is a lot closer to sociology and psychology than it is physics. It's a lot
Absolutely.
softer and squishier than people want to pretend it is. So.
Yeah, it wasn't always that way, but man, it really like, yeah. I don't know. It was talking, and I'm. You and I are thinking about all these counterfactuals. You know, the first thing that popped into my mind was stories from Robin Hood, right? King John, you know, or,
Yeah.
being, what is it? In the Crusades, and so it is being run tyrannically, and the tax person is coming from town to town, and it wasn't you're going to give me money, it's you're going to give me a percent of your crop if you're a farmer. You're going to give me a percent of your livestock if you know you raise animals, you know, and so taxes were taken, but not in the form of a currency, but as a percentage of what was being produced by those people because they were used. And it's in the same way that churches take tithes, right? You know, 10% of what you produce doesn't mean that you necessarily always brought money. It meant that if you were a baker, you bought bread. If you were a farmer, you know, you might bring meat or produce, and that worked.
Pastor has to eat.
Pastor has to eat. You're right. Yep. All right. And pastor's got some good opinions about what he deserves. Like listen, like reading the Old Testament and seeing that, oh no, you don't just bring any calf. You bring the fattest calf. You bring the nicest one.
Yeah.
I don't just want steak. I want the best steak that you have.
Yeah.
So,
Beggars can be choosers,
and
apparently.
they are. Absolutely. All right. So Elliot, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. You can go find me places like on the interwebs. Secular Rising US is the new organization. That's the one I'm telling everybody to go look up. It's very easy. Secular, and then the word rising, and then US. So go find all that stuff, and make sure that you guys have it on your calendar, March 31st. Because we are going to be doing a really awesome mega stream, bringing on a bunch of incredible people, like Mr. Murphy himself will be hanging out with us for a little bit, and we will just be talking about the organization, the ways that you can support, and just how you can get involved and find your people. You know, this year is probably going to be really tough for a lot of people, and I think the next couple of years we're going to need community. And so that's what I want to do. I want to throw myself 100% into that. And I have so much fun whenever I'm hanging out with all of y'all. So come hang out with me.
Good. Also, you're going to find both of us in the after show. We're going to be going to Discord. You can find the link to the Discord in the description for this video. I do want to read super chats. My unfinished journey sent $2.22 and says, "Hail Nero, Eric, and SR, and hail defending rights." Thank you. Insomnia Doodles sent $5. Thank you. Says, "Summer, I posted a message for you in the SG general chat and Discord. I hope you read it." Thank you. It is your support that makes this happen. And I definitely want to put a call out there. If you like the show and you want to see it continue, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. I want to make sure that I can keep paying for Colin's studio, and that needs support at the moment. So if you have been thinking about it, please, and you can, please do. If not, totally understood. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, get this out there, share it with your friends. That is how this show grows, and we would sincerely appreciate it. I am going to be guesting on a podcast this week. It's recorded, so I don't know when it's going to come out officially, but I'm going to be guesting on Go Home Bible, You're Drunk. So that should be fun. And yeah, Elliot, any other big things you've got before you're on again in a month?
gosh, there's got to be one or two things coming up. What am I doing? I'll be on Atheist Experience next week. Oh, I'm also doing another talk with the RFRX
Nice.
podcast. So I love hanging out with Daryl Ray and Gail
Oh.
Jordan and all the wonderful people over there. So
Tell
if
them-
you don't know about recovering from religion, you got to go check them out.
Absolutely. Tell them I said hi. I missed them both.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you in the after show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm Secular Rarity.
This is Skeptic Generation. Do you remember the end line?
We're glad we had this talk.
You got it. Bye, everybody.